and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here to our 10th annual Fireside Chat. Can't believe we've done 10 of these. As tradition dictates, we have an amazing discussion for you tonight. Our program committee is to be especially congratulated for putting together this year's program, which has become another ULI tradition, a full house and a sold-out event, so thank you all. I'd like to first thank our sponsors for this year's Fireside Chat, whose generous support has made this evening possible. They are Macmillan, our lead event sponsor, Atrium Mortgage Investment Corporation, Cone Partnership Architects, Milborn Group, NAC Design Strategies, and RBC. Please join me in thanking them. Turning to tonight's program, we are excited to have Peter Gilgan, founder and CEO of Mattamy Homes, in conversation with Mary Federau, EVP and Chief HR Officer at Mattamy Homes. Peter is one of Canada's most successful entrepreneurs in many ways, thanks to his innovative business practices. In establishing Mattamy Homes, Peter studied home design concepts from all over North America and Europe. Inspired by the new urbanism movement, he set out to build communities that broke away from the bland and impersonal developments he saw popping up around the country at the time. Appointed to the Order of Canada in 2013, Peter's commitment to philanthropy and community building is unparalleled. From healthcare to physical activity to higher education and community legacies, he is truly a respected and dedicated community leader. Peter established Mattamy Homes in Burlington, Ontario in 1978, and since then it has grown to become the largest privately owned home builder in North America, as well as Canada's largest new home construction and development firm. The scope of Mattamy's operations encompasses land acquisition, community design and development, and housing and parkland design and construction. Today, Madami continues to produce everything from village homes to single-family detached homes, as well as mid and high-rise condos across the GTA, Ottawa, Calgary, and Edmonton, in addition to 10 markets in the United States. And I can say from first-hand experience, it's a real pleasure working with them. They're a great company. Of course, Madami is not run by Peter alone. He has built an incredible team. Another crucial piece of this puzzle is Mary Federau, Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer. Mary is also the chairman of the Peter Gilgan Foundation and is on the board of governors of the Calgary Parks Foundation. Mary holds an MBA from the Richard Ivey School of Business and was named as one of Canada's top 40 under 40. It is safe to say that these two are an impressive pair, and with this, I will turn the floor over to Mary and Peter. Please join me in welcoming Mary and Peter.
There we go. Thank you.
What size is my good ear? Oh, okay. What's that, Mary? No.
Yeah. This is what happens every day at work.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a real treat to be introducing my boss. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. Hopefully we can manage that. I'm really thrilled that so many people came out to hear me speak. I know the truth. Peter is an impressive guy. I joined Madami about 8 years ago. I came from a completely different industry, health sciences. And I don't know if I've told you this, Peter, but when I got the call about working with you, I said, who's Peter Gilgan and what is Mattamy Homes? I didn't know that until much later that Peter is actually a rock star in this industry. And one of the main reasons I decided to join Madami was actually because it's a great company, great culture. Mostly it was about Peter as well. I mean, he's a visionary, and he had a really compelling story about how he wanted to grow Mattamy Homes, and I wanted to be part of that. So it's a real honor for me to be here tonight with you and have this time to question Peter about his career, his personal life, his views on policy and government, and a whole host of questions. So if you're okay, why don't we get started?
There's only one comment, that Mary's not telling you the whole story why she joined the business. We have a whole bunch of farms that seem like they'll never get developed. This is not a political speech, of course. And Mary loves to ride horses, so she figured maybe there'd be a way to kind of keep some horses at the so that was really
no, that's true. I keep suggesting that we have a, what do we call it, the resort portfolio, the resort division, which could include ranches and land in Turks and Caicos. And so I volunteer to run that.
All right.
So Peter, I'm going to get started with a really easy question to warm us up. What's your prediction about the housing market in Toronto?
I think the fundamentals are just fine. I think that, you know, we have great job growth. The rest of the economy is doing great. The immigration numbers continue. The ability to overload the market with supply, as you would all know in this room, does not exist. And so I'm close to declaring the housing recession, close to, not quite yet, but close to saying it's over. And, but I also would say that hopefully we learned a little lesson, hopefully, about not getting too far over our skis as far as pricing is concerned. And we just became completely disconnected with the help of a lot of speculative purchasers from anything related to affordability. And at the end of the day, people got to pay for their house with their paycheck. And we're so far out with that that I'm very pleased that we reined in a little bit. And my fervent hope, quite frankly, is that we don't follow the Vancouver trend, which we're seeing that double-digit price increase again. Because all, you know, I've been there before. And all it leads to, when you go that high, it hurts when you land. And it not only hurts the people in this room, but it hurts a whole generation of young homebuyers, which in turn hurts us because they become completely disenfranchised with the idea of home ownership, and we lose a whole cycle of people. So it's, you know, it can be altruistic if you want, or it can be self-serving depending on how you want to look at it, and to some extent it's the same thing. There's lots of reasons I hope that we keep prices under control. Of course, we're not in charge of that, the market is, but I sincerely hope that we get back to trying to make, you know, an honest buck.
One of the maybe follow-on thoughts to this whole topic is about the recession. You said you're almost willing to declare that we're kind of past the tough times, but you've actually lived through a number of recessions. And what is your advice to the industry, to folks in this room, about how to kind of weather them?
Well, I guess one thing we're learning once again is that no two recessions look exactly the same. And, you know, that old saying, cash is king, you just don't want to be too far stretched at the end of a cycle. What we always do is we try to get in front of the problem. We try to run at the problem instead of run away from it, because it ain't going to go away. And so we try to run right at it and tackle it immediately. And I'll share with you that Madami started to prepare for the housing downturn in August of 2015. And we started to prepare for it in a very organized and structured way. And you might say, well, that was a year and a half too early, and you're right, but I'd rather be too early than too late. And we put in place at that time a number of procedures and policies and protocols that we hadn't had in our business before in order to best protect ourselves from a future that was a little less certain than had been before. And for us, it's worked extremely well. So you can't prepare enough for a housing downturn, or, you know, and we're in a cyclical industry. Why the hell do you think we make, you know, in the grocery business, they make 3% returns, right? Maybe 2%? Because everybody buys bread every day. And we make bigger returns, but the problem with the bigger returns is there's bigger risk. And you see, you've got to be ready for both. And, you know, we love the big returns, but we tend to ignore the big risk. Just try and be ready for it as best you can.
You mentioned the affordability issue and young people. What would your advice to the next generation of home buyers be?
I really don't think that they should wait for prices to go down anymore. I think that the cream has come off. I think that there's a smile in the room. I think that at our business, we've certainly seen a hugely positive response in the last 90 days or so to a resetting of a price that's like the price of 16 or 18 months ago. And the good news is these are people showing up as families to buy a house. This is not three brothers each buying a house and all that kind of business. These are buyers. These are people that are going to actually move into the home, which is extremely healthy for the market. The condo market's a different matter, of course, but on the ground-related stuff, it's a good time to buy. The high-rise market, which is now represents nearly 75% of new home sales, is crazy. But once again, it's healthy. I don't see prices going down anytime soon. There are way too many pressures, price push pressures that are going to keep prices at the level they are right now.
In Toronto, anyway.
In Toronto, anyway, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Peter, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary at Mattamy.
Next summer.
This summer.
Yep.
When you started the company with 1 or 2 lots back in 1978,
12 years
in
old,
Burlington.
Yep.
Could you ever have imagined that this is the company you would have built?
Oh, absolutely not. No way. Really, I just wanted to make a good living initially and have some fun and try and build nice-looking homes. And that was kind of my ambition, was to build houses that look great, that lived well, and that people really loved. And when I started, I was really doing custom homes for people. So there was a lot of interaction with the customers. I spent an average of 40 hours with a customer before I actually got them to contract, because I didn't know when to shut up usually. But anyway, are you sure you can afford this house? And all that stuff. And anyway, I had no idea of this. But it's funny, the sort of stepping stones, because growth is never like that. It's kind of like this, right? And always the stepping stones were as a result of a big housing recession. And I've learned to say, and one of the kind of Peterisms that we say around the office, hopefully all the time, even when I'm not there, is every problem, every challenge is really just an opportunity hiding inside. And I really firmly believe that, and in my career, that's proved to be the case. So recessions aren't so bad.
So we're with a great group of people who are interested in land development. Talk to us about your very, very first land deal. Do you remember it?
So yeah, so there was an accidental one, because I was buying 2 lots from a small developer who was an ex-NFL football player, and he went bankrupt. So I had to pave the roads. I still think there's a $3,500 LC outstanding to the region of Halton for that development. And hopefully the curb is still in great shape, and 1 year we'll get it back. But the first intentional land development was a 50-acre plot of land in Oakville that I bought in 1986, so that's a little over 30 years ago. I'd been a builder up to that time, buying service lots pretty much. And I had the good fortune to be invited to to go into partnership with a company called Genstar, who owned this big development out in Oakville at the time called Glen Abbey. And they had some certain corporate reasons why they wanted to bring in a partner to generate a pretty up there profit and loss statement for year end. I think it might have had something to do with bonuses. I didn't inquire, that's their business. And their stock price and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, I ended up in partnership with them in the mid-'80s, and I kind of got a look inside, and I said, yeah, this is a good business. This is great. And as even back then, the land supply was starting to tighten up a little bit, and I just felt that in order to be a little bit more in charge of your own destiny, you better start buying land. So the first piece I bought was 50 acres. In 1986, it produced, let's see, 213 lots only back in those days. 4 UPA was about the right number, 4.2, something like that was a good number. And I sold 100 of them to Great Gulf because I was too, well, I was too kind of afraid to, hold the whole 50 acres myself. So I laid 100 service lots on the Great Gulf and did the others ourselves.
Great story.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to get it developed and permitted? And
back then, not hard. It was we thought it was hard. It was lay down. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So maybe following along, fast forward to today, talk to us a little bit about the challenges related to working with municipalities.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is like preaching to the choir. Houston, we have a problem, right? We have a problem. And it starts at the province with attitude and legislation, and it's permeated down through all the lower-tier municipalities. And I won't go on all night about it, but it's devastated affordability. Absolutely devastated affordability and predictability in our industry. And it's disenfranchised, in my view, an entire generation of young Ontarians from being able to actually own something. It is pathetic, it's criminal, and it's become so entrenched that people think it's the new normal. People don't know it was any different. Having a more diversified platform in which we trade, both in Canada and the United States, there is no place as bad as the GTA to get development done. And it's started about 15 years ago, and it continues to deteriorate. The good news for all of us is that everybody else is in the same boat. So if you can hang on long enough, you're okay, because prices have gone up, right? But is that really the way to do business? Is that really the way to make money? Is that why we're in this business? Or are we in the business to provide great houses at affordable prices to support our country's economic engine? That's what I think we're here for. And if you do it well, you make fine money, but we're not here to sort of prey on people, the P-R-E-Y thing. And it's kind of what's going on. And I mean, this is easy to misquote this and for me to say it wrong, and I'm not trying to say we're predatory, but we're put in a position where we don't have much choice. Because when you finally get a piece of land approved after, umpteen disappointments, you have no choice really, because you know that it might be who knows how long till you get another piece, and who knows what you're going to have to pay for that other piece. So you have to take advantage of the situation. You have to. It's the only prudent business thing to do. But it's not reasonable. It's not right, in my view. And it's not healthy for our country in the long term.
Is that kind of bureaucracy, that policy situation, is that one of the reasons that you decided to diversify to the U.S.?
Absolutely.
Can you say more about that?
Well, look, in 1980, no, sorry, not that long ago. In the mid-90s, so that's only 21 years ago or so, 22 years ago, Madami was doing 3,500 ground-related houses in Toronto. 3,500 in, I think, 1994, 1995. 3,500 closings or sales, I forget which one. 2 years later, we were doing 2,000. Not because we didn't have land. Not because we weren't fervent about trying to get it approved, or not because we decided it would be a smarter thing to hold it off the market, but because the tone, starting at the provincial level and permeating through the lower tier municipalities, the tone changed. And I woke up one year and all of a sudden, you remember, anybody that's maybe a little older will remember when you used to buy farms and you'd give the farmer a VTB mortgage. You'd give them 40% down, and then and we had to give them a 5-7 year mortgage or something. And don't worry, boss, by the time the mortgage is due, we'll be in development. We can refi the mortgage. We'll roll it into the bank loan because we're into the development stage, and the bank will finance it, no problem. And then one year, all of a sudden, there's these cash flows coming in for me to approve, and there's all these big-ass lumpy payments. I said, what the hell are those? Those are all those mortgages that came due. What? Yeah, well, the land got delayed 4 years, and the mortgage didn't, and so we got to pay off all those mortgages. It's kind of just a sort of sign that something was changing. Andy, you're laughing. You saw it how many times, right? And that was bad 10 years ago. Not compared to today. This is a donkey show today, so you can quote me on that. Because I mean it, and I'll say it in front of any mayor in any municipality. Shame on you, and shame on the province for what they're doing to our economy. You might think I feel a little passionate about it, because I do.
Peter, talk a little bit more about the vision for U.S. growth. We're in, I want to say, how many markets now? 8, 10?
Something like that.
Something like that. We add them every kind of year. So what's the plan there?
It's a big country. As you would all know, there was about a 10-year pause, let's say, in residential real estate activity there, where there was a lot of people lost a lot of money, and I'll say we were fortunate enough. I like to say I was too lazy to lose too much money, because we didn't get to too many markets before things went bad there 10 years ago. I think that there is significant opportunity for our business, for our company in the United States, to continue to grow significantly. And we plan to do that. The size of the investment is different than it is in Canada, than it is at least in the GTA. And my only sort of caution to anybody in this room would have to be, they speak English, but it's a different English. And if you just think you're going to go down there and show them how it's done, good luck. Because it's a whole different way of doing business. It's a whole different way of negotiation. It's a whole different relationship with contractors, with municipalities. And we all have heard how many stories of the Canadian guys that went down there and got their arse handed to them on a plate, right? Many, many, many. Well, not this boy so far anyways, but we're gonna, we have significant growth plans there, very significant. I guess we made our first investment there in 2003, so nearly 15 years ago, and we've paid the dumb tax a few times, and if you are ever thinking about it, make sure it's not your last nickel you're going down there with.
This group might be interested to hear about a couple of the big land deals you've done down there and the vision for some, because they're pretty astounding, actually.
So maybe there's, wow, there's a number to get excited about. So one real cool one, quite frankly. Who's heard of Celebration in Orlando? About a third of the room. So Celebration is Disney's gesture toward embracing new urbanism in residential real estate and sort of having it reflective of the whole Disney brand. Okay, who's been to Magic Kingdom? About a third of the room. Okay, so it's kind of like the residential version of Magic Kingdom. Like everything's authentic architecture, is historically accurate, and so on and so forth, expensive to build. It's four-sided architecture instead of just stuck like three sides and a nice front and all that kind of stuff. It's been ongoing for 20 years. Francis Giuseppe, where's Francis? Okay, we went down there 20 years ago to sort of study how cool it was and what things we could borrow. And you remember that thing we did in Burlington and all that stuff. And Andres Duani, who was the demigod of planning at the time, was heavily involved in LRK and all those guys. And so we thought it was terrific. Anyway, fast forward to today, Madami is now the exclusive developer and builder of the rest of Celebration. So that's an awesome community for us. It's going to be, you know, the other guys have to clean out that are there now, and then we'll bring it home. It's only 1,300 pieces, but it's a halo for us. It's a really halo project for us because of obviously the inference of the Disney brand, and we're going further with them actually on some other matters. But anyway, that's another story. And trying to tell a little anecdote about that deal.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you want to? Okay, so this is a little sidebar, nothing to do with real estate. I was out in Burbank, California, finalizing negotiations, and we had this lunch and this something they call the round room, which for Disney people is, you know, heaven or something, I don't know. But I say to the gentleman at the end of lunch, or during lunch, I said, look, I'm going to leave a couple $1 million on the table here, more than I should, but I want something. What do you want? I said, I want 12 permanent passes to Disney. Oh my gosh, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, short story is, he gets back to me sometime later and he says, look, he says, I could only get them for, no, I said, no, well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, he said, I could only get them for 10 years. However, each pass, and it has to be assigned to an individual. I said, well, that's nice, thank you. You're gracious, thank you. So each one comes with 3 guest passes. So now I ended up with 48 passes. I don't have that many grandkids yet, but anyway, so.
Yet is the operative word there. Yep.
So that's a great one. I could talk about more, but there's one probably that's for the history books for Madami. It's and we're working with including Rob's firm, who's bringing massive value to our thought processes here. Is a 25. It's a 9,000+ acre development in Southwest Florida. We'll have approximately 25,000 residential units. We're currently building a baseball stadium for the Atlanta Braves there. There's a hospital. There's massive infrastructures, and we're working with LWLP on many things, but including designing a downtown and like a whole downtown out of nothing, right? It's just a field, and we're going to have like a, you know, the ye old downtown thing with the little boutique restaurants and all that stuff. And so that's a pretty exciting development for us. We got a bonus out of it because there's a few thousand homes in the area already with no retail infrastructure in place. So already before we build one house, there's demand for that typical infrastructure, the drugstore and the grocery stores and all that kind of junk and the dry cleaner that you all hope for in a new development area to help sell houses. It's going to be there when we start selling. So that's just a happy accident that kind of worked out for us. So that's pretty exciting. And you know, I could go on, but there's some
those are 2 great
pretty
examples.
cool ones. Yeah,
they were very cool.
Yeah.
Peter, this isn't one of the questions, and I need to tell you that we have not rehearsed at all. Peter's hearing and seeing these for the first time, but you often talk about how so much of Mattami's success is due to the fact that you've had great partners, and I'm struck by the fact that there are a lot of partners represented in the room here. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship and the importance of those folks over the years?
So partners in the broad sense, meaning folks that, while they may not have a financial stake in the business, they have a connection to the business, and as our business succeeds, hopefully so does theirs. A long-standing relationship with a number of folks in this room, of course, Q4 Design, Francis DeBack, and an unprecedented run with Silvano Tardella and his firm NAC, and they're doing virtually, I think, all of our land use planning across all of North America. And Sil, how big was your firm? Where's Sil? Where is he? How big was your firm when we started out?
6 people.
How big is it today?
65.
Yeah. You're getting less efficient. Yeah. So, and it's, it's great to be able to work with, the same people that you've come to know and trust over a whole number of years. We don't have, another obviously name worth mentioning would be Robert Hill and the Hill Real Estate Company that's looked after our sales and for, 25 years now.
Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of people that you've developed these great relationships that have been really important in
well, we pay the bills,
We pay the bills, right. I even see the accountants over here somewhere. There's PwC, yeah, there we are. I'm going to change topics completely and talk a little bit about your philanthropy. I interview a lot of people as part of my role, and am out speaking to lots of groups. And one of the things that people always ask me about is, tell me more about the foundation. We hear so many great things about the work Peter has done in terms of, the community. And so maybe let's just talk about kind of why is the idea of giving back important to you?
What are we here on this earth for, And the funny thing is, giving money away inspires you to make more. Maybe I'll just put it that way. So that's the bottom line is that, really. If it's done, and giving money away properly is hard work. It's not just toss it in the wind. There's a lot of kind of research and whatnot that goes in evaluation that goes into it, and then accountability after. And one of the things we're really fussy about is the accountability. Are you doing what you said you're going to do with this money, and what are the results as compared with what you said? It's no different than business, actually, but it would feel kind of a lot less meaning to make money if you can't do stuff with it. And some of the stuff we do is around trying to improve the lives of fellow humanity. And that takes, place in more obvious places that many of you have seen around Toronto with a few buildings with my name on it and stuff. But we're most thrilled and most proud and invigorated, I guess I would say, by some of the work, for example, that we're doing in Africa. And we're now in three countries in Africa doing things, and the impact that we're having is you can taste it, you can see it, it's real. You build a new hospital tower, intellectually you understand how that's going to help and work, and private rooms as compared to wards, and so it's going to cut down infection and reduce the hospital and improve the outcomes and blah, 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 blah. Yes, I get that, right? But, and you see your name in lights too, that's pretty cool, right? But some of the other work we're doing is really neat as well, not just in Africa, but in lots of parts of Canada as well, in northern Canada and so forth. So it's kind of, it's evolving. It's really, Mary's the chair of the foundation, and my son Luke and daughter Stephanie really run it, and I have really nothing to do with it other than show up on the odd field trip. and that suits me just great. We're going to be increasing the funding to the foundation this year by somewhere between 30 and 60%. So we're going to really take it up to another level again from business profits. We're going to be budgeting, I haven't finalized the number yet, but we're going to increase the funding, as I said, by another 30 to 60%, so we'll be able to do even more. And and anybody who's thinking about it at any level, I'll tell you, I've never missed a dime. Never. And you won't. It'll be money well spent.
So there are a lot of young people who in this room who might be looking for some career advice. Can you talk about who your first mentor was?
Oh boy, I had a few, and they were, because I was a chartered accountant. Okay, so I knew the numbers side. I had a couple of clients in the home building business. I knew what bullshit looked like because if it didn't work, you couldn't lie to me because I saw it 2 years later on your books. So, there's none of that stuff. But, I didn't know anything about home building per se, and so I had a couple of great mentors on the sort of construction piece and all that stuff, some wonderful people. I had some wonderful, two different folks, and Andy, you would remember one, Bob Lowe, and a great on the marketing. And Bob had a grade 8 education, but man, he was street smart. And crisp white shirt, French cuffs every day, gold cufflinks, a Duke, eh? Everything always pressed. His hair was always perfect. But and then he'd pick up a piece of straw and start chewing on it. It just blew the image. But he was the most street smart guy I've ever met, and he kept me. He got me a lot of great deals, and he saved my ass more than once, I can tell you. It was in 1989. The housing market went real bad, real fast in April of 1989, and the dynamics of the housing economy were very different then. Interest rates were very different than they are today, and so on and so forth. And Bob gave me the advice in December of 1989. Okay, so everybody said, wait till the fall. It's just a little thing. In September '89, the market will pick up. Oh, it's football season. Oh, it's raining. Oh, it's whatever, Thanksgiving, blah, 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 blah. There was no market in the fall. Bob says, put everything you have on sale. I want you to take 10% off everything. Well, my average selling price then was $350 grand. And I got used to making 70 grand a house. So I thought I deserved 70 grand a house, right? Bob, do you realize how much money I won't be making? He said, trust me, you won't regret it. So I took his advice, and we sold every stinking house we had in about 3 weeks. Anybody else in the building business in this room in Toronto was cussing me. They said, what are you doing that for, you asshole? You're doing this wrong. By June, they had to take 25% off. By June. So that was a great mentor. And I've had 2 or 3 others along the way. Yeah, some great stuff.
When we're back in the office, we often talk about the fact that one of our great constraints to continue to grow is the fact that we don't have enough really great, talented people in every function and discipline that we need. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that we look for? Because there are a lot of people who would love to come to work at Madami, but what is it that you think has made the difference when it comes to kind of our people equation?
So, insatiable curiosity, brutal determination to get shit done and not talk about it forever. It's not always first in, last out type of thing, but it's what you do with your time during the day. Honesty, owning up to problems, owning up to mistakes real quick is a very endearing thing, and it just reduces a lot of that stuff, which we see in organizations, would be very, very important. You got to be smart too. There's no substitute for just being smart. You know, being able to connect the dots, being able to see relationships, being able to see why that piece of data over there and this piece of data over, how they're related, and how if you pull them together, that's going to be really helpful. Someone who is a combination of respecting the traditions and the things that we've developed in the business, but at the same time saying, yeah, but the world is different. And someone who's not afraid in an appropriate form and a respectful way to bring on innovation in the business. And we all know there's so much room for us to innovate in the business we're in.
Say more about that.
Well, I think I personally think that we're at a, let's say, a technological precipice in our industry. And I'd like to make sure that we're on top of that precipice and not on the bottom of it, but you know what I'm saying? Precipice may be not the right word, but we're at the bottom of a cliff of technology. And I think, you know, we've kind of bumped along for 10 or 15 years, and we've got some nice little systems going now and so on and so forth. But I believe that in the next 5 to 7 years, there's going to be a huge transformation in terms of the way some firms in our business will use technology. And everything from, so let's start with big data, let's start with artificial intelligence, augmented reality and virtual reality are going to become the basic chicken broth of how we make a successful home building and development operation. They're not going to be nice to haves. They're going to be need to haves, and if you're going to be really successful in the next decade or two. And the danger I see for many of us is because it's a bit uncharted waters, is to outsource too much of this stuff and then not own the learning. And I really try to guard carefully about us trying to own what we learn and not, pay someone else to do the work for us, and then they own the knowledge that's garnered from that experience. So, okay, a couple of real sort of super quick examples that I used in my little stump speech in the last few weeks. And one would be, and this maybe is a little more applicability, the couple of examples I'm going to give are a little more applicable to the US, but you can easily interpret them, apply them to Canada as well. So in Tucson, which is a great little city we develop in, people worship the mountains. They don't have water, they have mountains, and they love them. And there's really good reason to. They're gorgeous. They change color during the day as the sun rises and falls and so on and so forth, and they're just spectacular. And having the right view of the mountain adds huge value to your home and huge value to your community. So if we photograph the mountains, and during the land development design process, we're using an AR tool to ensure that the road patterns have exactly the right angles, and especially say that main paseo when you walk in, when you drive into that community, and it's looking right between those two peaks or whatever, and you're not off that 3 or 4 degrees, and it's just, it can make maybe it's somewhat subliminal, but a huge difference in how you feel about that community. Huge. Now, there's about 3 or 4% of us get that in our head right now. We don't need augmented reality to see that. But the other 97% they need that to make sure that when they're designing that community. So you take that, and then you take the incredible financial tools that are available to us today and do modeling and say, yeah, well, that'll give us more value, but is there a payback on it? And if you have a great financial modeling tool, which is again, you know, with a sort of modern suite of software, you can easily, well, not for me, but for guys like Chris, can easily figure out, is this improvement worth making? Is there going to be yeah, because we're going to lose 4 lots or something like that, but does it pay back more than that over the whole community and all that kind of stuff? So it's just tons of examples. Designing houses, merchandising houses. Put the window there. Oh, wow, now the room feels bigger. How about that? Look at that. Make that window a little foot deeper. Now that room feels twice as big, and so on and so forth. It's going to permeate everything we do. And I'm only really getting started because, you know, okay, so why do you think Google bought Nest? Any ideas?
I'm going to say data.
Yes, sir. Data. Damn right. Why do you think Amazon bought Ecobee?
Data.
Why do you think Madami's partnering with Ecobee? The access to data is going to create massive economic value beyond which, you know, we can't even fathom what it's going to be worth today. And it's going to impact the value of our real estate. It's going to, when you connect real estate and transit and transportation, and you merge data about that, it's going to hugely affect the value of our real estate. And we're on top of that shit. And you guys should be too.
Peter, as I hear you talk about the impact of data and technology, I can't help but think about the huge focus from day one that you've had on customers and understanding our customers. And it might be kind of instructive to talk a little bit about kind of your view on your approach relative to customer data. Customer research. Customer research.
Okay, yeah. Well, there was a business I bought several years ago in the U.S., and I went, you know, you go around and you visit, and they're starting to build these model homes. And I said, oh, okay, so tell me, how'd you know which model homes to build? And they said, well, we really don't, but, well, they weren't quite that bald about it, but it was basically, we're not quite sure, but we're going to get them built, and then we'll see if the customers like them. And if they don't, we'll build some other ones, you know, and we'll get it right sort of sooner. And that's like, oh boy, this is not my kind of company. We got some fixing up to do here. So we would rather spend much more time at the very beginning and peel back that onion till we're right down to what's the thing that's left in the middle of the onion? The seed? I don't know what the hell's in the middle of the onion. What's in the middle of the onion? Anybody know? Any cooks in the room? Anyway, right down to anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. We keep peeling back the layers of the onion until there's nothing left, because, you know, you want to know what it is that's going to really hit your customer right between the eyes. Now, in Toronto today, it's like get a house for sale. That's it. End of story. But that's not reality. That's not a way to run a business. That's a way to run a sloppy operation, and you can't rely on that forever. So, for us, it's trying to really understand the psychographics and the econometrics or whatever the word is of that consumer group. And it's very, as you guys all know, you've got to fine comb it. It's, you know, you can move 5 streets away, and it's going to look different. And we'll spend an awful lot of time. So one of the old Peterisms again is go slow to go fast. You go slow to start, take your time, not too much time, but take enough time to figure out who's going to walk through that sales office door and exactly what it is they're going to want to buy, what they can afford, what appeals to them, and as importantly, what they couldn't care less about. And try not to give them too much of that last thing, because that's just going to cost you money and they're not going to reward you for it. So that's kind of a thing that a lot of people don't kind of get, that last part. You know, if two's good, three's better. Not always.
How have customers changed in your career?
They've gotten younger, or I've gotten older. I don't know. Okay, so obviously, in many ways, obviously, as the city's changed in terms of diversity, our customers have changed massively. And I'd say that you know, there's a greater propensity for new Canadians to want to own homes than folks who've been here even a few generations. It seems to be something even more burning in them is to own that house. So you know, being, and no news to anybody in this room, but being really cognizant of the demographic, I guess, of the consumer group that's probably going to buy is super important. Understanding that today most people are working, understanding today that there's been a huge shift toward a premium on urban living for a significant segment of the population. And I think, you know, well, it's far be it for me to really comment very much on the high-rise because we're pretty new in the game and we're not in any way what I would call a significant player. We're maybe at best a B player, but Chris is going to get us to an A minus at least, but in the next 12 months or so. But
No pressure there.
But you know, I think the reality is that for many people, living in a tower is going to be their entire life. They're going to spend in a tower, and that's in this environment, in the Greater Toronto Region. They're going to spend their entire life in a tower, and hopefully there'll be a time when there'll be a better opportunity for us to make towers a little bit more livable than many of them are today, where they're really, you know, sort of rental projects. And I'm not going to start to spill the beans on what some of the Madamy's plans are, because that would be inappropriate. But you know, again, I would just say it's to really try and look beyond just today's buyer, who's probably an investor, and try to understand a little more what the real wants and needs are of the ultimate folk, whether it's through ownership or tenancy, or it's going to live in that space. And I think there's room to improve our efforts there.
That's great. Going back to the question of innovation, one of the things that we're talking about, kind of playing at the edges of today at Madami, is around the whole area of sustainability, kind of the impact that we're going to have in that whole space. Do you want to say a few words about that and what your vision is?
For sustainability? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's start by saying in 1978, the first house I built, I put extra insulation in the walls. And it wasn't much, but it was something above the building code. And it provided, I think, another R6 or something to the walls. And at the end of selling the 2 homes, I asked the real estate agent, so what the customer, and what? Oh, shit, I forgot to mention it. So that's where we were 40 years ago. And At Madami, we've made many attempts over many years that have not been particularly successful, frankly, at sustainable initiatives. And so learning from our mistakes, we set about to try and do it in a much more organized way. And one of the things that I think we've learned is, first of all, that in order for it to be mainstream, it has to pay for itself. So there's a bunch of stuff coming together at the same time right now, which is kind of cool. So the cost of some of the technology is going down quickly. It's not quite Moore's Law, but it is going down. The cost of energy is not getting any less expensive. I'm not saying consumers will pay a premium, because if you're going to count on consumer paying a premium, good luck. Yes, you'll get 3% will pay a premium, but the other 97% will not. So we have to repackage the whole thing. What we're doing is we're at a high level. What we're doing is we're industrializing kind of how. Now this is at the design stage. You can't go to a community today and buy this from us, but how the whole utility and energy model is delivered. And for example, we're in the development stage of a 400 lot zero carbon community. And one of the features of it is that there will be a community-based geothermal system. So, and the traditional way is, you put one plant in one guy's house and he has to manage it, and it's massively inefficient, the payback on it's like 98 years or something like that, and it won't work. So this is basically, the concept is simply to do it at a community scale. You use the shared fact that one person needs heat and the other person needs cooling at the same time, and it all goes into sort of a communal thing. You have an industrial operator operate it, and there's lots of utilities that private utility operators want to own and operate this equipment. And the utility bill that the homeowner gets would be no different than the utility bill they'd get were it not a geothermal system, whether if they were heating their house with gas and cooling it with electricity. And yes, now there's pumps, pay the electricity to run the pumps, but the utility overall, the overall cost of paying for the utilities will be the same. You just won't be generating hydrocarbon emissions to do it. I'm being a little vague. It's a little bit complicated, but we're doing this, and we're in extensive discussions in the southern United States with a number of the electric utilities around solar. I'm going to cite Tucson again. They get 340 days of sunshine a year. So if solar is going to make economic sense somewhere, where might that be? And again, sort of create it's not on a house-by-house basis, although some of the equipment may be on the roof of a house, but you don't own it, and you don't pay for it, and you don't maintain it. And anything that's generated goes into a community grid and then gets delivered to your house as you require it. And you pay for it at the normal utility rates. But it's all renewable stuff, all zero carbon stuff. It's kind of like drinking from the fire hose. There's so many things. And once you get it, we've got some tremendous partners, including some of the typical utility companies that we're working with. And, frankly, and to be candid about it, this is one of the areas where at Madami we've done enough talking. Now we better get acting, and we'll hopefully see a lot of results in the next three or 4 years about it. One of the most frustrating things about it is that same bureaucracy that I'm talking about. The status quo, the unwillingness on the part of some of the municipal bureaucrats, etc., to want to cooperate. And they just seem to want to roadblock it for whatever the hell their own agenda is. I have no idea. It's incredibly frustrating. We just want to go. And instead you've got to stroke all these egos and stuff to just try and get somebody to move a piece of paper across their desk. It's just absurd. But it is slowing down progress. I can tell you, I've become quite good friends with a very well-known Canadian environmentalist by the name of David Suzuki. Many of you know his name, right? And he and I we were fishing this summer out in BC. I got some pictures. I can show you on the phone after. And caught some great coho. But anyways, and so someday I want David to be my little secret weapon, because I want him to go into a municipality and scold them in front of town council for not getting off their butt and doing something instead of just procrastinating and obfuscating for another 18 months while we study it. No, Ed, I'm not talking about the city of Mississauga, so it's okay. You guys are great, okay? but because that's what it's gonna take. Is you know, when developers come with this stuff, how's it viewed? Some other way to make money, right? Some other way to wang-dangle the town into making more money. Developer. We should be working together. We should be working as a team. And it's the most frustrating piece, as I said, is when you've got to push on the rope all day long to get some of this stuff done. Mm-hmm. Not always the case, though.
Not always the case.
No.
We've got some great partners. So I think it's time to open up the floor and see if there are any kind of live questions. There's at least one mic.
Yep, there's another one.
There's 2 mics, so maybe wait to have a mic in your hand before they ask a question so everybody can hear it. Who's brave here? Oh, there's, okay. Alrighty, do you want to stand up and introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Amit. I work with Morrison Financial. My question to you is, you said from memory in 1989, I suppose, when the market went bad too quickly and too soon. I mean, too much and too soon. So what about your prediction of today's market? Like, how do you see things evolving? The other slightly different question is, in fact, totally different question is, you talked about this distributed electricity generation with solar. What's your view on natural gas? Because it takes a single shaft turbine, and natural gas converts to both, gives heat as well as electricity. So what's your view on that? Thank you.
Yeah, those aren't really related questions, are they?
A twofer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was around market recovery and what that might look like, and the second was around something having to do with wind turbines.
Yeah, so okay, on the first one, it was, in the, Andy, would you say the second week of April 1989?
April the 26th.
Oh, it was the third week.
to be
Oh,
exact.
third week, okay. You know what? I was always ahead of you, man. I was hit me a week earlier. No, but anyway, April, whatever it was. April of 1989. So this time around, it was April of 2017, right?
17.
The recession that started in Toronto in April of '89 lasted really until 1994. Earlier tonight, I said that the recession that started in April of 2017 might be over. I mean, the recession, you won't get the price back, but you'll get the business back. There was no business for 4 years. We were fighting for business. And prices continued to deteriorate for 4 years. It was like I said to myself back then, I have to copy people who are in the produce business and the electronics business to merchandise my stuff. Both of whom have products that the longer you hold them, the more they deteriorate in value. Did you ever pay more for a 10-day-old banana? No, right? Or a 10-month-old computer? No, you don't. So you have to start to think like that. And that lasted for 4 or 5 years. I'm not seeing that this time. Not seeing it. Totally different dynamic. Your second question, I didn't really understand. I think you had a point you were trying to make, which is that gas isn't so bad compared to oil or something, or coal, or...
Well, so my question is this essentially, that do you see distributed electricity generation as against the current model where you have like big power plants and transmission lines and
Yeah.
also transmission losses?
Yeah.
Do you see distributed electricity generation?
Yeah, I know where you're going. Okay, so some of the so there is a challenge with some of the utilities whose model is around 50% of what they bill you is around the cost of generating, and 50% is the cost of transmitting. So if you interrupt that business cycle, you've screwed up their revenue model, right? And so some of the utilities, irrespective of what it might be, how well it might be for the planet, and all that stuff, and good for our progeny and so forth, it can go against the vested interest of big power. Yeah, great point. You're absolutely right. And so you need to look where the low-hanging fruit is. There are some jurisdictions in North America where it's the mandate of the utility to achieve a portion of zero carbon energy over a fairly short period of time. And so those are the utilities that are much more willing to work with us because they've been told they have to.
Okay, another question over here.
Mr. Gilgan, thank you for this tonight. My name is Rob. My question is around sustainability. You were talking about that earlier, and I know you're building in Florida quite a bit. How does water factor into your development and sustainability plans?
Potable water?
Potable water,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
We haven't really addressed it very much yet, but I'll say this, that obviously the idea of creating a community where you reduce the water consumption by, let's call it 30%, by putting the best, most efficient appliances throughout the entire house, from the washing machines to the shower heads and so on and so forth, and recycling the gray water to water the lawns and all that is certainly part of the future. We're not boiling the ocean. We can't do everything at once. It's certainly on my mind. I think it has relevancy not just in Florida. It has relevancy here too. We all have something called a development charge that we all pay, right? And in Florida they call it an impact fee, same thing. And part of that development charge is related to supplying water and sewer infrastructure to the neighborhood and the community and the development area and all that. So, and as many of you would know, there's already in some municipalities a recognition that if you're building, let's call it a townhouse, below a certain square footage, that building unit is going to impact less, and therefore they have a smaller development charge based on the idea there's going to be less water taken in and less sewer going out and all that stuff. So why can't we do this on a community-wide basis? And my friend Ash Singh, he put me onto this because Ash is in the apartment rental business, and Ash has figured out that when he buys an old apartment building that includes the utilities, is included in the tenant's rent, and he retrofits the toilets and changes them to the taps and so on, he gets a good payback. So why can't we do that on a development here in Ontario? And why can't the municipality say, you know what, the pipe that we're running here now, instead of it being good for 10,000 homes, will now be good for 15,000 homes because each home is more efficient. So therefore we can afford to reduce the development fee by X percent, by whatever's a fair percentage. Everybody wins. It's great. Everybody wins. But do you think the municipalities will see the wisdom in that right off? Good luck. The reduction in the impact fee could well be enough to pay for the extra cost of putting in these appliances. Could well be. Or at least go a long way toward contributing to it. And that's, who loses? Nobody. But getting through to them, we'll have to leave that for Dr. Suzuki. You know.
Okay, question over there, yep.
Hi, my name is Jessie. In terms of sustainability, do you see American market is more favorable for the progress, or Canadian is catching up? You can't. I don't think you can talk about it on a countrywide basis. I think you have to talk about it on a city by city basis, and you know yeah, I think that's the proper answer. It's not just kind of, it's funny because, you know, the leader of America is, you know, he's denying global warming and all that stuff, right? But that's not what's going on in the cities. In the cities, they're concerned about it, and they're the ones that really make most of those decisions. I think everybody would like to hear you. Could you say it to the microphone? Yeah. I personally struggle a lot in terms of solar energy. When I was building a home like that's off-grid, I see all this data coming in from America that I don't know if it's because the southern climate, they are very favorable in terms of what they can use. Like even with battery, I fought with the government what I can use in Ontario. And it was like, I don't know if it's because of my personal experience or the province here is just not very progressive because we're oil production country, or, you know, if it's a municipality thing, I'm not sure.
Okay. Another question?
Yeah. I hear you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Case. I work in affordable housing in other areas as an urban planner. So my question is, so I'm going through the CMHC study that was released
Sorry,
yesterday.
could you just speak a little more slowly?
Yeah.
Sorry. So I'm currently going through the CMHC study that was released yesterday. So one of the most interesting facts that I've seen in my brief reading is that the lack of supply response to increase the demand for more supply is a great contributor to increasing house prices. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, what do you find to be the largest barrier? Is it that there is a lack of land supplied for more housing, or is it that overall the density is does not, you know, allow for the appropriate supply of housing?
So it's a difference in point of view as to whether there's enough land available. And I know the province has some consultants who continue to assure them that there's plenty of land at affordable prices. And I've said before, bring it to me, I'll buy every goddamn acre. And they haven't brought me one yet. There's just this inexplicable disconnect between how short we are of developable land and how long it takes. I'm all for regulation. I'm all for ensuring we don't do things that we shouldn't be doing. But what I'm not for is paper sitting on people's desks for 9 months. I'm not for people playing power tripping games and all those crazy things to slow you down. I'm not for an unrealistic forecast that shows all this land is available for supply, but it's just completely untruthful. And it's affected prices, as you know, ridiculously. I mean, house prices have doubled, land prices have quadrupled, or whatever it is in the last, period of time, or more. And it's, I don't fault anybody who owns land for selling it for the best price they can get. That's the way the free market works, and unless we're going to go to the communist thing, which I'm not an advocate of, that's the best we're going to have. But it's government intervention at best, and at worst, almost interference with ability to get stuff done. That put us, and I'll put it right at their feet. That's the problem.
So, okay, one last question, and then, yep, go ahead.
Hi, Peter. Blake Wyatt. When you started the company in '78, it was a market dominated by mostly single-family homes. And if you were entering the GTA market today, where, like you said, 75% of new development is condo, how would you overcome that barrier of entry that's much, much greater, and what would you do?
Well, you can't, you know, I mean, obviously the condo business is the deep pocket business, so I wouldn't be starting there. But there's always opportunity. It just looks different today. But there's no free lunch. There's no substitute for hard work. You know, yeah, when I started the company, you know how many hours I slept the first year? I took one Sunday afternoon off. That was it. And I don't know how long that went on for. That was it. If you're going to be successful, and you're going to start your own, you're going to be your own business, don't think you can do it in 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week, because you're kidding yourself. If you're not prepared to put in 80 or 90 hours a week, don't even get started. And don't plan to do that for just a few months. At least the first 3 to 5 years. If you're willing to make that commitment, there's tons of opportunity. And I'm not suggesting everybody should do that, right? Because it's not the kind of lifestyle that everybody wants. But if that's what you want to do, that's the sacrifice you're going to have to make.
I think that's a really great note to end on. Good evening, everyone. My name's Derek Goring. I'm the Vice President of Development at First Gulf and the Chair of ULI Toronto. On behalf of the ULI Management Committee and our advisory board, I would like to thank our guests, Peter Gilgan and Mary Federau, for making our 10th annual Fireside Chat a huge success. Thank you. One of the reasons I really like this event and what makes it quite unique is the really frank and informal conversations, and you certainly delivered on that, so really appreciate that. And obviously education is an important part of the ULI mandate. We learned a new land use planning term tonight, the donkey show, which is great. And one of the favorite thing that you said tonight, among the many things that were great, is giving away money makes you want to earn more of it. I've never heard anything quite like that, and I thought that was really great insight. As we've heard tonight, Peter's accomplishments in business, innovation, philanthropy are numerous, and we look forward to discovering how Madami will continue to lead in construction and development, as well as what's in store for the future of home building across North America. And who better to help tell the story of Madami and its vision for the future than Madamy's own Mary Federau. We thank you both. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank again our event sponsors, our lead event sponsor Macmillan, as well as Atrium Mortgage Investment Corporation, Cohen Partnership Architects, Milbourne Group, NAC Design Strategies, and RBC. Thanks again. And very briefly, I just want to flag a couple of upcoming events of interest. Our 4th annual Meet the Chiefs Gala is on April 10th. I'm happy to say that we are pretty much sold out 2 months in advance. There are maybe 1 or 2 tables left available if anyone is desperate to attend. That is the only way to attend, is by purchasing a table. It's another great opportunity to celebrate public and private sector planning, the community here in the GTA. And secondly, our Women's Leadership Initiative will be hosting an event in celebration of International Women's Day as part of their She with He campaign. It will feature a discussion with industry leaders as they share strategies for sustainable change in bringing gender parity to the real estate and development world. We hope that you'll join us for that event on March 8th. And with that, I just want to say one more thank you to our sponsors and to Peter and Mary, and a big thank you to all of you for attending tonight. Have a good night.